If anybody's out there right now, we'd love for you as you're getting on and getting adjusted to just send us a chat or even a text letting us know that you can hear us. I want to go ahead and remind individuals that it is a live show, so there could be any number of technical difficulties, and we apologize in advance, but we will go ahead and resolve those as soon as possible, or if the technology lets us resolve it. So, if anybody's out there, if you could just go ahead and give us a text or even a chat, letting us know that you're able to hear us, and we will start in a minute on that level. Alrighty, getting feedback. How's everybody doing today? Everybody straight?
Hey,
I'm
doing
good.
good, doing
I'm doing
good.
great.
Good, 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 good.
Good to be here.
Alrighty.
Good to have you.
Yes, yes, yes. Alrighty. So we are straight. We are hearing the good folks out here right now. Alrighty. Greetings. Want to say hello to Dwight, Angela, and Deborah. Thank you for joining. And let's go. We train officers to run towards danger. We like to shield people from all types of nonsense, particularly bullets. And we train them to make split second decisions that most people will never face in a lifetime. But somewhere along the line, we forget they're human. And we forget that behind the badge is a brain and a heart. And absorbing those type of traumas call after call, year after year, has a cumulative effect. This job doesn't just bruise the body, as you know, it breaks the mind. And officers are expected to be strong, resilient, stoic, and unshaken. But what happens when that uniform becomes an armor for untreated pain? And what happens when no silence becomes the norm? We're going to go ahead and dive into a little bit of that today. So, without further ado, retired Sheriff Victor Hill, let's go ahead and introduce our guest.
Well, we got a special guest here today. Former Officer Jen Jones. I had the honor of meeting her. She reached out to me through social media, and her story was riveting. And I think nobody can tell it better than her. So, first of all, welcome. And
Thank you.
first,
Thank you.
to get started, just run us through your law enforcement background, the agencies you work for, how long, and what type of agencies.
But before I get started with introducing myself, I just want to say, Jerome, thank you for that intro. That was amazing, and it sums up a lot in a very short, sum of words. But yes, so I started law enforcement in 2010, and it was pretty much during the recession. A lot of places they were furloughing. They had people that were being laid off, and it was a very hard time to get into policing. At that time, a lot of the cities that were in North Fulton, they broke away. They annexed, and you had places like Milton that had recently annexed. They were starting a police department, so it opened up a lot of vacancies for Fulton, and so that's where I started. I applied, and
I don't
um,
want to interrupt, but let folks know this is Atlanta because there's people that watch from different areas and they might
oh,
not know where
okay,
your
okay,
officer
okay.
at. So this is the
Yes,
Atlanta
yes.
metro area. But keep going.
Yes. So the area that I, became employed in is now considered the city of South Fulton. So that kind of puts it into context. But yeah, so being an officer there, I was very excited. One of four of my mother's children. We struggled coming up. My parents, they were on drugs. So I was the first to graduate high school, the first to graduate college, criminal justice degree. And then I had my dream job. I, was hired as a police officer. There were maybe over 100 applicants when I applied because everyone was looking for a job. So I really felt like it was destined when I got hired on with Fulton County. I was, I was elated.
And for
So
those who don't know, that don't live in Atlanta, or haven't been here, the city of Atlanta sits inside Fulton County.
Right.
So she was an officer for Fulton County Police, which covered the
Right.
unincorporated areas of Fulton County. But the city of Atlanta is in Fulton County, and probably about 30 other cities from Union City to
Yeah.
College Park to, like you said, Milton, and it, there's a lot of
Alpharetta,
places.
Roswell, everywhere. Yeah. All
Absolutely,
of it.
absolutely, absolutely. So keep going.
So
What kind of, so what did you serve in uniform patrol? Of
I
course.
did. I served in
Okay.
uniform patrol. There was, a nice sized group of us that graduated at the same time. So, we had really good training, really good people around us. We hit the ground running, you know, um, and I was good. I was good on the streets. Everyone that came out of the academy with me, we were really good at what we did. And it was, I can look back now and say it was the result of good training. Um, you know, I pride myself in that even now, even up to this day. So we hit the ground running. I became really good at making arrests, chasing the bad guys, chasing the trouble. And some of it, I believe, was part of my upbringing, coming up in a rough area of town, in a rough neighborhood, seeing things, being predisposed to things as a child because I'm living in poverty with, you know, parents that had been addicted to crack cocaine.
And where
So
was
I
that?
was, I'm sorry.
Where was that? Where was that? Where did you grow up at in the rough area?
So it East Point area, like East Point and College Park, is now Woodward Academy, but that area in East Point and some areas that we grew up in, and like Clarkston, we lived in like a condominium once my mom, was able to get on Section 8. But before then, we would live either with my grandmother on the west side of Atlanta, or in East Point where the rent was cheaper. So I went through a lot of ups and downs, going through that. And so I was able to move out of my mom's house, move in with my brother. He took care of a lot of the things, um, for my necessities to make me succeed. So everything that I was going through with becoming a cop, I really felt like I had a lot to give back. And I did. So I was one of those officers that, I made a mark for myself immediately. I was compassionate, but at the same time, I was firm. And you can tell from leadership, they will let you know that, hey, look, you got a bright future ahead of you. And so, I pride myself on that. And I was still young, I was late 20s, so I was still maturing and stuff like that. But I was really listening, and having certain people guide my career, that meant everything to me.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So let's jump right into the heat of it. You were with Fulton County Police, and then you matriculated to college policing. So tell us how you got there, and then let's get into the story of what happened,
Okay.
and what on that day of what happened, and in your words, you say, "Hey, I just lost it." But how did you get to college policing?
So with being working with Fulton County, I moved on to a specialized unit. I served on that unit for some time. And you're subjected to a lot of things that are very stressful, from hours to certain call outs, having this adrenaline dump because you're chasing people, high speed chases. And it was grueling. It took its toll over years, and especially when there's regime changes within an agency, things can change really quickly. And when you're an officer and you're young and you're coming up through an agency, it's like it's your family almost, And so when regime changes come along and things are different, you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? You no longer feel the protection of those around you who were helping to guide your career. Now you kind of feel a little bit abandoned, right? So
That's
you're
true.
already exposed to all of these outside factors with the citizens, but then you start getting the internal pressure and the lack of camaraderie, like how you had in the beginning. So that begins to take its toll in itself, right? So I really felt like getting out of regular patrol and things like that. I felt like getting out of that would help me. um, in December 2017, I pretty much had my last straw when I arrived at a car accident, and it was my boyfriend that I was dating at the time. He had a car accident in my jurisdiction, in my beat, where the vehicle was totally engulfed in flames, and I didn't even know that it was him. And that's when I knew I had to plan my exit. I was working his accident, not even knowing that it was him.
Wow.
So,
So that and I get what you're saying because the car was so. And I've been in them scenes. The car and the person, you can't recognize what type of car it is or who the
no.
person is. You can't even tell what sex the person is or what race because of those type of the fires. I understand what you're saying. Keep going.
So, at that time, I was, I went through so many different emotions when I later found out that it was him. Um, I was just really over it. That wasn't the first death that hit me within law enforcement, but I kind of pressed on. But I started to make my exit strategy, and I wanted to go into the medical field. So going to the college police department, that would help me go into the medical field without having to get student loans. You know, so again, just trying to be calculated, just trying to move smart, and trying to get out of policing. Well, when I left Fulton County, and when I left Fulton County, I took a really big pay cut, and it was a big deal. I started really drowning financially. Everything took a toll. It was like a mounting of circumstances, from health to finances, just struggling with my own personal depression, trying to figure out what to do, how to get out of it, and still needed it. I was carrying everything, still carrying family. Um, so I put a lot on myself, and I wanted an out. I did. I wanted an out, and I went to the college police department, but I struggled. My father caught cancer. He had stage 4 lung cancer. It was a short battle, but it was rough. It was really really rough, and everything it mounted. And so fast forward going into um, the university system, I thought it would be the best thing for me because I wanted to try to join the nursing program. And so I applied to, that was my alma mater where I first got my criminal justice degree. And so it felt only right, to go back and work for them as a police officer. I was really proud. And I realized that taking that big of a pay cut with the amount of expenses I had bought a property. It was on, over 5 acres. It was draining me again, more things mounting, right? But you still got to get up and you still have to do that 12-hour shift. You still got to make it the roll call somewhat on time, and
Hmm.
so I began, suffering, but I had been suffering for years, and I was trying to just carry on with the pieces, you know,
Understood.
and
Understood.
yeah, it got to the point, when I was with county, that I was taking FMLA every year because it was something. Every year it was something in my last few years after my dad died. And so it felt right, for me to leave and try to exit out of law enforcement the right way. I knew I was drowning.
And that was 17 years with Fulton County, right?
No, no, no. No, it was 11 years, 11 and a half
Hmm.
years with Fulton. And then I
Okay.
did 2 years into the school system.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
All right. Let's jump into it. Tell us about the incident that. Tell us about the
Ended it
incident.
all.
The end. Yeah. 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 Go right ahead.
That ended it for me. Yes. So the incident, the one that I reached out to you about, the one that, made me passionate about mental health in law enforcement, even more so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, I was charged for assaulting someone who stole my car. I did this while I was on duty as a university officer. I had been going through an immense amount of pressure, and inside of my head, I felt like I had no option. Um, it was getting to the point where I was being destructive, you know, drinking more, not having any enthusiasm, just sleeping and, going through the notions of just trying to survive day to day, trying to survive day to day. And during this particular time, some young guys were coming over to the campus and they were going in golf carts, still in golf carts. And we were just, we didn't have a whole lot of us, but we were really determined that we were going to catch these guys. Me being the sergeant, I was very determined. And so this particular day, I come to work and I park my vehicle near the police vehicles. And out of habit, I leave my keys in my vehicle because if you've ever worked for a campus or, in the school, you have tons of keys. And so, and we didn't have we didn't have those 411 with the pockets. You just had the polyester. So what I'm saying, I couldn't just carry all of those keys. So I was, stash my car keys. And on this particular night, it was the beginning of school. They were having some good parties across the street at the apartments, and we were over there, and we were breaking up the party, and someone crashed into like two, three cars. It was DUI. So I'm working my DUI. It was all night. I think it started at 12 and it ended at like 6. So 6 in the morning. And I get off at 7. So it ended around 6, 6. I was trying to get back to the precinct. I get back to the precinct and I get ready to dump all my stuff in my personal car and go close out shift. And I notice my car isn't there. So I'm riding around looking I know I parked my car right here. And, I just feel my little heart, just drop to my stomach. I was like, oh my God, please don't tell my car was stolen. So I go and check the cameras, and true enough, some young guys, they appeared to be guys, came over to the campus and they were pulling on the door handles and they seen that my vehicle was unlocked. And then they got in and you see the lights come on and they just drove off in my baby. Drove off in my baby. I was so hurt. I was like, okay. I wasn't, I was like, I'm an officer. I know what it is. I know I messed up. I know I left my keys in the car, shame on me. And so I'm like, all right, let's go find it. Let's go find my car. It didn't have that much gas in it because I was broke. I'm struggling. So I'm like, they can't get far. So I am, I'm like, okay, it's the end of shift. I'm tired. At the time, the chief was like, hey, take one of the vehicles home and we'll figure it out. So I go home next day for the shift. I come back, they put it on the system. We're looking for it. It didn't hit not one camera in the area. Not one camera in the area, which made me even more scared because I was like, I'm building anxiety because I'm like, that means my car is sitting somewhere.
Mhm.
We found cars months
Mhm.
later after they've been stolen. So panicking, right? Building up. It's building, 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 building. And so I'm like, I need my car. I
Mhm.
don't have anything else. At this point, I'm upside down and everything because of the issues with my house, me trying to get my house to, you know, um, renovate it to the point where I can sell it. So I'm upside down on that kind of stuff. Taxes went up, mortgage went up. I mean, everything that was could happen was happening. And I went home and I was just like, it'll pop up. I'm like, it'll pop up. But when I went back and found out that it didn't have, it wasn't hitting any cameras, I was hurt. And so I tried to rent a car and basically the insurance company was like, you gotta wait a couple of days because they normally say cars will turn up within a couple of days, So but I needed a ride to work. So I had a friend rent me a car. And so they rented me a car. And at this point, I'm running late for work because I thought I was going to be able to rent the car and I wasn't. And then now I'm scrambling. And so then, I had to get somebody to rent it for me. So I'm in this rental and I'm running to work. I run in, grab my stuff, get dressed, run out. I'm headed to the campus and I'm running late. So me being a shift sergeant, I'm running late. So I'm trying to get there. Um, I gets into roll call. So I gets in the parking lot and leave everything in the car
And the keys.
and the keys
Okay.
and jumps out and runs into roll call. And the young guys came back onto campus and were messing with golf carts again. And so I was like, you know what? I said, they know where my car is. And I was like, we're going to lock down campus early. And if anyone needs to get into a door, we'll let them in a door. But we're going to lock down campus early and we're going to stand by and, just create a little sting operation and watch and see where they're coming from. And, because it's not that many of us. And, it was only like two people on my shift, and I'm like, we gotta catch these guys. And they know where my car is. So I proceed to walk and lock up campus. I'm walking. My corporal, my subordinate, he's driving. So I'm telling him to go check, you drive, you in the perimeter. I'm finna lock it down by myself. I do that, and I get in my police vehicle, and I realize I'm like, oh man, I want to get some food, and I left all my stuff in my personal car. Let me drive around to get it. I drove around to get my personal items out of my car because my routine is you pull into work, go and get the keys, come back down, get your police vehicle, transfer everything over. So because I broke that routine and then broke routine again by walking, locking down campus, I'm already thrown. So I come to get my stuff finally 2 hours after, start of shift, and the rental car is gone
So they stole your car again.
twice.
Wow.
And this
What
is
year was this?
2023.
Okay. Well, that
This
makes
is
sense
2023.
because Jerome, by the way, that's when I came out of office. So there you go.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. And so when they stole it again, I mean, I had a straight donkey head on my neck. You hear me? I felt like he like a straight jackass, like a straight jackass. Like, oh
And
man, I was
let
hurt.
me say this. Let me say this for everybody listening. And public service announcement. We need everybody not to leave their keys in the car and not leave them unlocked because that's how a lot of cars are stolen and how a lot of criminals get guns. But it does happen. That doesn't give people the right to steal your car
Right.
because it's unlocked. So,
But be smart about it. But you know what?
exactly. Right,
I, I'm
right.
I'm
But
just
that doesn't give anybody the right what happened, even though because it's still your property. We keep going.
yes. But and another thing is, and that's the catalyst right there for the mental health breakdown. Is it it mounts and mounts and mounts, and that muscle memory. I was in autopilot. I was functioning in autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
So um, and then you have that muscle memory. But when that happened, I told my corporal, and so I had to go and try to find this car. So there's a set of apartments that backs up to the campus. So I gets out, I goes out of the property, and I hit these apartments, and I go down. It's a really big set, and I go down to the dead end of it where you could see through the parking lot. You can see through the bushes, straight through to the police precinct parking lot, and that's where they were crossing over. But sitting down there was a golf cart, one of our golf carts. So I'm like, okay. I see a lady sitting in her car, and I go to the lady and I'm like, ma'am, do you know who had this golf cart? Did you see who was in this golf cart? And she was like, ma'am, I don't. She was like, I don't know. I was like, ma'am, please. I was like, whoever took this golf cart may have my car. I was like, please, if you can help me. So she went and got her son, and her son came out, and he looked like he was so irritated. But she was like, who had this? She was like, he was like, who had the golf cart? He was like, it's the same boys who always be in them golf carts. And so She was like, yeah, it's probably such and such, and they're juveniles, so I'm not gonna say, any names, but she's like, it's probably number one and number two. So she was like, and hang out with number three. So she was like, let me show you where they live. And she told me to follow her, and we went through a separate area in the apartments. And when she pointed out the building, I seen the rental car parked right there in the front.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay. And then she showed me where some other people stay who are associated with the golf cart. So I'm like, okay. So I'm calling my, subordinate, come over here. I found the vehicle. Um, you know, First of all, we're a small department, very small, um, underfunded. We didn't even have proper dispatch for in the evening. The dispatch was located in the state of Texas. So there was a big lag on any type of communication when it came down to reporting things. So here I am on a stolen vehicle, and I need to get a tow truck started, and it's probably going to be, a good 20-minute delay from our dispatch system. So I stopped a guy that's snatching cars with repo, and I asked him to move it because at this point we need to finish our investigation, and I can't afford for this car to just sit right here. It's not like I can just get on and they're gonna call right down the street and they're gonna pull up and get the car. You know what I'm saying? And we don't
Mm.
have other officers that can sit on it. So have a guy tow it back to campus, and he did. I told the young driver, I said, listen, this is my car. It was stolen. I don't have the keys. If you could drag it back to campus for me. And he did. He didn't charge me anything. At this point, I'm looking in, seeing my phone, and I realized that my cash app had depleted. And so I'm just elevated at this point. I'm desperate. I'm elevated. But at the same time, I know how to do my job. And so I know to take the emotion out of it. Right.
Mm.
So we goes up to where the young man stays, where the vehicles was parked out front. The mom was really nice, let us right in. We goes in. There's like two 13-year-olds. One has on an ankle monitor, and they're in there, you know, blitzed out of their minds. They're like, man, we don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, you
They were
know,
smoking weed.
yeah, the room was all fluffed up, but they had
Okay.
nothing.
Okay.
So the room was fluffed up, you could smell it. But I was looking around and I didn't see any of like my personal property. I'm just eyeing the room. And so we told him, we was like, hey, okay, well, let's go and talk to you guys at the precinct because, there is a golf cart down there and they were saying that they saw you all riding the golf cart. So at this point, we want to talk to you all about the golf cart and about the stolen car outside. And they started panicking. And it was like, well, we didn't steal no car. We didn't steal no car because he said, I don't even know how to drive. They didn't know how to drive. And so we separated them. My partner talked to one. I talked to the other young man. And, mother gave us consent. And, he was just, the other young man admitted that they were in the car, but they weren't driving. Okay, so boom. Now we just need to figure out who is driving. And I'm trying to find the keys. And so they tell us that this is this guy. He's like, he's older than them, and they point us in the direction of where he could hang out. So we go and we check, one place, and they was like, hey, look, he just, we played a game here sometime, and that's it. So we found out that the guy's homeless and he's sleeping in breezeways. And they're like, well, you can find him probably in one of the breezeways. And I'm like, okay, I don't want I don't want this guy to have a weapon. I didn't have a weapon in the car when he took, that vehicle. But if he's hopping vehicles like that, who knows? So I got my backup with me. I'm telling him, let's check some breezeways. So we check a couple of breezeways. I find my book bag with some of my like personal property all thrown around and stuff. And he wasn't there. Then we check another one, and my partner goes inside. I'm standing outside because there's a window and you can let the windows up. So I'm standing outside, make sure they don't jump the window. He's inside, and I hear the let me see your hands, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. And the guy's coming down, and partner is kind of leading him down by the shirt, like let me see your hands. He's like, hey, I ain't got nothing, ain't got nothing. He was like, you don't have anything. I'm like, what you got on? You got any weapons on? He's like, I don't have any weapons on. He had a hoodie. So he's taking stuff out of his house. Like, man, I ain't got nothing. I ain't got nothing. I ain't got nothing on me. Nothing. And I see my keys hit the floor and some of my other personal effects that were in my car. And the type of heat that rose in my face, I was heated. Heated. Because at this point, I still need my car. And so when he bent down to pick up the keys, he didn't know. I don't know if he knew or not that it was my car. He should have at that point because all of my personal items were in the car. You know, when he stole my car, none of the personal items were there because I had already transferred my property to my police car. So I had all of my things. But this car had everything in it. So um, he bends down to pick up the keys and the other stuff. You know, he's gathering his things. And I flips my axe baton and I cracks him across the back. Flop, right across the back. He pops up like, whoa. He was like, whoa. I was like, get on the ground. Get on the ground. I could feel this fire. It was like it's so hard. It was like a blurry. I could feel the tunnel vision, if that's a way to describe it. I could feel myself in that tunnel with the vision of getting what I wanted from him, and that was my car.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, you know, my credit cards, everything, you know, debit card, everything. And so I told him to get on the ground. He gets on the ground, and I whoop his buttocks with the aspartame,
Like a spanking.
like that good old auntie ass whooping.
I hear you. I hear you.
But I hit him, and I was like, "Where is my car?" I was hot. I was heated. And at first he was saying he didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, where's the black Lexus? And I was screaming. I remember screaming. I remember telling him, that's my car. You took my car. It was to the point where the subordinate had to pull me back
Mm-hmm.
and be like, Sarge, that's enough. I blanked out. And um, I think he got up, we got him up, we detained them, went outside, we put him in the car, and I remember my subordinate, he was like, that's not cool. He's like, not cool, Sarge, not cool. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I lost control. And he was like, you just ended both of our careers. And I was like, no, I just ended my career. Like I wouldn't jeopardize someone else's career intentionally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
After the adrenaline dump, I understood, I completely understood what I had done.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. As soon as he told me that he would take me to my car, I felt a like a relief, like a weight, a little bit of weight lifted. I was still upset because of my money and my personal effects at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a little bit of relief. But so he's in the back of my car, the juveniles are in the back of the other car, you know, give them a little citation, send them on home. My he drops the lady, he drops the, I'm sorry, it's a lady and gent. I'm reading somebody's name. But no, he drops the juveniles off, and I'm like, hey, come back and pick him up. Come back and get him. He's in the back of my car. Come back and get him. Drop them off, come back and get him. At this point, I know I have to be hands off. I know that much. You know what I'm saying? He goes and takes them back, and he comes back up the hill, and he just drove by. I was like, radio unit, you come back to the location and put the subject in custody. At this point, he still was in possession of stolen property, right? Let's just follow what the facts are. You're still in possession of stolen property, but you still are a victim. You're still a victim, and there's still an internal case at this point, right? There's a civil rights, criminal, all of this, has happened in the process. But I'm like, I know I can't be hands on, but this report has to be written correctly, so you need to come back and take possession of him like you're supposed to do. What you just witnessed me do. You're not supposed to leave him with me, you know but it was the inexperience of the officer. He didn't know. I scared the shit out of him. I did. He took off and did not come back. So at that
So
point,
now the suspect that you gave an auntie spanking to is still with you in the back of your car and handcuffed.
yep,
I got you. Keep going.
I um at this point, I'm asking him about my debit cards. Where's my ID? Where's my, you know, my work ID, my personal driver's license, my credit cards, gift cards. It had my wallet, my purse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm asking, where's my stuff? And I'm yelling and I'm crying. I'm like, he was like, okay, I'll take you to where your stuff is. So he walks me around a playground area, and I see like my ID had been burned. Um, I had my you know, like insurance cards and all that kind of all the they had burned everything. They had burned stuff, and I was just it was a lost cause at that point, and I was just like, I was picking up some of my stuff, and I was like, "Where's the car?" I was like, "Where's the car?" He was like, I don't know. It's some kids. They be taking cars and stuff, and they stash them in a few different places. I can probably show you a couple of places. I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, um, I knew that he was scared, and I was scared. I was
Mm-hmm.
scared. I was scared for him, because
Why
of the
why were you scared
magnitude.
for him?
Because of the magnitude of what had happened. I could feel what I had done to him after my
Mm-hmm.
rage came down. I could
Right, right.
feel his fear, and it
Did,
made me want to instantly protect him. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I'm just like, I want to get to my car. I'm still concerned about my vehicle. But
were
at the
you able
same,
to find? Were you able to find your Lexus?
he took me to where it was. He took me around to a couple of places, I guess, to throw off exactly where it was.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually he took me to where it was, and it hadn't moved. They stashed it down in a deep, buried deep in some apartments, but it had a flat tire. I think he may have been living in it for a little bit. I don't know. It's a lot of you know my stuff was out. I keep a clean car, but they threw a lot of my little personal effects from the glove compartment, and they smoked it out, all that kind of stuff. But I sat there and I cried. I apologized to that young man. I knew I had messed up.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had messed up. I kept raising my unit on the radio to respond, even after I told him that I had located the vehicle. I texted him and told him where I was. There was no response. Radio
Were you
silent.
able? Let me ask you this: how long were you with him? How long were
Um,
you with him? You think all together after this happened?
I would say a long time, like
Okay.
maybe like 5 hours,
Did you
because
call anybody else by phone to tell them what happened? Any higher ups, anything like that?
so yes, so we only had to, because of the small department, our major retired, so we just had a captain and the chief.
Right.
And so I called my captain and I told him, I said, Captain, I've messed up and I'm going to have to resign. And I woke him up out of his sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And um,
About what time you think that was?
I'm gonna say maybe it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, maybe close to
Okay.
two, between
Okay.
1:30 and 2 o'clock. So we
Okay.
found my car around between 1 and 1:30.
Okay.
This jumped off. We may have found him about 12:30. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? So so the first hour was, take the kids back. He left. I'm sitting right there like, is he coming back? Then I'm talking to him. We walk around, find the stuff. He said he gonna take me to my car. We get in the car right around. So that's about an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
then he finally take me to where the car is. And he's like, I think that's it right there. And so it was it. And so, I hops out and
I hate to interrupt. So you call him, he doesn't respond, he doesn't get out of his bed and say, "Okay, I'm on my way." After you tell him the severity of what happens.
no, because I didn't really tell him exactly what happened. So
Okay.
I told him, he asked me what happened. I said I hit someone with my aspartame. And he said that they have a weapon. And I said no. He said, okay. He said, I will be in at 7. I'll see you at 7. And that was the end of my shift. The shift started at 7, but I was raising my subordinate on the radio the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and he just wouldn't respond.
Do you
Like, I'm
think?
literally
Look,
sitting there.
do you think that he at some point called the captain or the chief to tell him what happened, and that's why he wasn't responding?
I believe that that's what happened because so we opened up the campus at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
At I had uncuffed the young man after I found my vehicle, and I seen that the officer wasn't coming back. At this point, I'm like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying? So, I had talked to the young man, and he explained to me his background. Um, it was very unfortunate that he didn't have his parents, living with his grandmother. He suffered from mental health. He had been slicing on his arm,
About how old?
struggling.
About how old is he, or how old was
He
he?
was 19. He was a 19
19.
year
Okay.
old,
Okay.
19-year-old man, and he was very polite. Um, and I told him, I was like, you didn't deserve this, and I hate that he has that memory forever,
Mm.
right? But I hear the corporal opening up the campus, and I'm like, what the, and the young man, he was just like, when I was raising him and stuff, he was like, man, you scared him. He was like, I think you scared him, you know, and I think that's what it was. It was completely out of his realm
Yeah.
of being able to, to deal with that. He's like, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Exactly. With the exception of removing the guy, you know. But yeah, so and then I heard the chief raise me on the radio that morning, um, and told me to report to his office. And I reported, well, I told him I had a subject in my vehicle that was in custody. And I transported him back to the campus. I recuffed him and transported him back to the campus because in my head, I'm like, he is still under arrest for
Yeah.
theft by receiving at least. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, naturally you're thinking that that's still in play. Me personally, I can't just put him out the car and say better look next time. Like at this point, what am I supposed to do? Um, so I transport him back to campus, and I asked the chief, told the chief, hey, look, I got somebody in my vehicle. Send the corporal to come get him. He did. I went up there to the chief office. When I was getting out the car, the young man, he said, I don't want to go to jail. He's like, I don't want to go to jail. He said, I don't want you to get in trouble. I said, that's beyond our control right now. I said, we have to suffer the consequences of our actions. And I told him, I said, I'm not pressing charges against you. But I told him, I said, I can't determine whether or not you go to jail. You know, the chief could very well trump me on that, you know, whatever. And so I goes upstairs, I talk to the chief, you know, I sit in his office, and he asked me, did I know why I was there? I said yes, because of the incident that happened earlier tonight. And he said, did you want to talk to me about it? And I said yes. I wanted to talk about it. And I'm one of those, I was one of those officers that I was very, very good at learning the policy and knowing how to apply policy. I was one of those people that, you know, I had so much knowledge in dealing with the policy thanks to having, you know, mentors that people would call me. So I knew I could have resigned right there in that moment, right? But my mental wouldn't let me do it. I literally sat there and told him the whole story, just like I told it to you,
Mm-hmm.
in its entirety, because I needed to get it out. And he told me that he was going to put me on administrative leave, which I understood. Um, I turned in my, gun badge, all of those things. I knew that he was going to terminate me. Um, I just didn't know how long. I did not know how long it would take him to terminate me. I needed my health insurance, so I'm like, okay, I know that's about to go out the door, due to health issues that I was having. Um, Now I'm not going to have a steady paycheck. I'm thinking about all this kind of stuff, and so it's pretty much too late for that. And I still didn't get the car. They never sent anyone to get the car. So I leave in the rental. I return the rental car and to the airport, and I Ubered myself home. I called Clayton County Police and I told them where my car was, because the university just did not pick up the car. They did not pick up my Lexus. They wouldn't go and
Can you name the university? Is it okay? There's some people wonder what agency you work for. Is it okay?
Clayton State University.
Okay, okay. Clayton State University Police. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, police department. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they never did pick up. They never did recover the vehicle. So I had to call Clayton County. You know, my keys are still at large for the Lexus,
Mm-hmm.
and then I didn't want the little boys or somebody to come back and get it. So they went and got the vehicle. They asked me to name a suspect. I told them a little. A guy showed me where it was, but I couldn't confirm that he took it. And even though he told me that he took it, when we was talking, he was like, I was apologizing to him, and I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I've never done that to anybody before, and I said, I apologize. And he was like, man, you whooped my ass. He was like, I could tell you was going through something. I was like, you stole my car. I was hurt. I was like, man, if I don't have my car, my credit was shot. I would have had no transportation, none. My credit was messed up. I couldn't go and get another car. If your car is gone for over 30 days, they'll cash it out. They'll cash it out to the dealership, and then I would have been asked out of a vehicle, probably upside down.
Good. So let me stop you a second. So for those who just joining us or whatever, I want a lot of people to understand where we're going and what's going on here exactly. We got a former police officer that had her car stolen twice. She caught the suspect, and and like in her words, she lost it and gave him a spanking, for lack of a better term, with an aspartame. But what I want
Yeah.
people to understand, and what's so I think riveting about this case, is she's not here to justify her actions. She's
Yeah.
here to talk about it and what led up to it from a mental health standpoint, and what can be done to help officers in the future. Uh, you know, this is not something where we're here to condone what she did, but
Absolutely not.
we do want to understand at the same time. That's one thing that's important in the criminal justice system. You may not condone, but there needs to be some level of understanding of why it happened.
Right.
Like the difference between someone shoplifting because they want new perfume, or someone shoplifting because they can't feed their kids. And even though both, and I, I figured you would say that, and even though both both situations are wrong, if we have wise judges, they will treat both of those situations different, because they're a
Right.
different set of facts and a different set of motive. There's a thing in law enforcement called mens rea, which is really adhered to, and is establishing a motive for a person when they do a crime. What is the motive, or was there even the willful intent to do a crime? And those things
Right.
need to be considered. That doesn't mean the person is right or wrong, but they need to
Wrong.
be considered when you're handing out stuff. So I want people to understand where we're going and why all of this is so very, very, very important.
Very,
Now,
very, very important.
what I want you to talk about, okay, tell me your experience. So you got it through the administrative part. So let's get to the part to where
Administrative part
now
is
that
over.
now right. So let's get to the part now where now there's a warrant for your arrest. Tell us that story and how that was handled.
So that particular chief, reached out to the DA's office. They didn't necessarily want to pick it up, um, but he reached out to the GBI, and the GBI picked up the case. They pick up the case. They interview the young man. They reach out to me for a statement. I'm working on building my attorney. I had already was referred an attorney, so I'm working on that for like my post. And of course, he was like, if it turns criminal, it's going to be something different. So I'm like, okay, I understand. GBI, they reach out to me and they're like, hey, um, did you secure you an attorney yet? And I'm like, I did. We're going to make an appointment with you all so that I can give a statement. And he was just like, we would love to take that statement, but right now we have warrants for your arrest. And so I'm like, okay. And he's saying the warrants are for aggravated assault, kidnapping, battery, and 3 violations of oath of office. And it was a hard pill to swallow with the kidnapping. It was. That was a hard pill to swallow. Especially knowing that, I tried to turn custody over. That was really hard, but the other charges, I totally expected it. And I'm like, okay, this it is what it is. It is what it is. And so like I'm going to tell my mom. I'm like, I go to my mom's house. I'm like, Mom, this is what it is. They got warrants out for my arrest. I need to turn myself in. You know, GBI is calling me like, hey, when can you turn yourself in? I'm like, I need to get some things in order, talk to my attorney. I can turn myself in, as early as tonight. And they're like, okay, um, can you do it on Monday? They were giving me more time. And I'm like, great, call me back. Oh, we can't give you any more time. We need you to turn yourself in now. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to get some things in order and I'll be right there to turn myself in. I'm going to get my dog so I can take my dog to my mom's house, change my clothing. So I'm preparing myself to go up in here. So I want to, dress a certain type of way. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Me and a friend of mine, we're on the highway going to get my dog. Cause I'm like, you drop me off and, take my dog to my mom. I didn't want my mom to see me turning myself in. And we're on 75 and I see the blue lights behind me. And I told my friend, I said, don't be scared. They're about to get me right now. They was tracking me. And next thing you know, Georgia State Patrol is on 75, 85 in the middle of the highway, middle of rush hour. It's like 5 o'clock. They don't stop traffic, doing a whole felony stop. The helicopters out, guns out, everything. They're like, let me see your hands. They probably thought I was armed or something like that.
Correct.
I don't, I mean,
Now, you was one of America's most wanted at that particular point, I guess. But go
I
ahead.
absolutely
Yeah,
was. They brought
yeah,
out all the toys.
yeah.
But yeah, that was, but it's, you know, it wasn't anything less than what I expected. It really wasn't. I didn't want my friend detained. I'm like, look, I don't want my friend going through that kind of stuff. And the guys were really nice about it. Clayton County, I guess, their special ops or TAC team, or however they call them. But yeah, when I got in the car, they put me in a vehicle and stuff, and the first thing they were saying, we were riding, they was like, um, Sarge, we got a lot of respect for you. They was like, we heard really good things about you. Um, a lot of people speak really highly of you. And they was like, man, he stole your car twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing. And from my experience, I want people to understand that this is real. It is real. Mental health is real, and it's growing. And we are in law enforcement. It's not a we anymore because I'm no longer there. But you all have the responsibility of making sure that these officers are mentally equipped to go out here and handle the job.
So let's
We
stop
need
right
more.
there. Let's
We need
stop right
more.
there. So let me ask you some questions. Let's switch gears now. We heard the story. What do you think could have been done from a mental health perspective to help you along the way in your career? You done spent 11 years with Fulton County. You respond to a scene, and let me just make sure that I make this clear with the audience. We're not trying to say, okay, based on all of this trauma, that Joan should have done what she did. What we're saying is we're looking at the totality of the circumstances and what could lead to things like this and how we can prevent it from happening. But you respond to a scene with a person burned beyond recognition, then hours or a day later you realize that's your significant other. No doubt you've seen a lot, like we've all seen over the 11 years. And then on top of that, you got financial problems. We don't pay police what they should be paid. um
Right.
and then we see things that cops do out of desperation, and we're not saying they should do it out of desperation. I don't think we should steal overtime or steal money, because that's not the only low paying job out there. But what we're trying to do is give the totality of the circumstance.
Right.
Underpaid, overworked. What could have been done along the way to help
Um,
you and help other officers that are out there now, from your experience? What do you think could be better? How can we stop this from happening in the future?
what I believe, I think that we should have some type of mandatory, and I see that it was they're saying the mental health and wellness act for law enforcement, and I definitely am familiar with that. But there isn't anything, grassroots that's putting this into these agencies and making sure that they're in compliance with this. So there needs to be some type of recognition when you see that. I saw it as a young officer in other officers, in
Hmm.
other veteran officers, and we would just be like, "Man, that mofo crazy," you know what I'm saying? And and it was nothing, to talk about the officer who would cuss you out mid shift and walk off. Like, that's, so we don't think anything of it. And God forbid you try to take a mental health day or you act stressed out. It's frowned upon.
Do you
It's
think
frowned upon.
do you think there's a stigma where officers are afraid or supervisors are afraid to say, "Hey, I think this person might need some help"? And then, of course, we also know there's an issue where if officers do need help, it could affect their standing with posts. It could affect their career. But do you think that's an issue that we got to find a way to get around?
Absolutely. See, the problem is, even if you go and talk to somebody, you fear being talked about. Having something wrong with your mental is considered a weakness, and the problem is, it shouldn't be considered a weakness. That can be considered vulnerability, that someone that's a little bit older in the department, or that can recognize it, or that's mature enough to recognize what's going on, the signs with an officer, and understand that it doesn't look the same in every officer. And so I think we need a little bit more testing. I think we need a little bit more testing, or let them know to use The EAP, the employee assistance program, it needs to be mandatory at least, once a month or once every other month, to make sure that an officer is getting themselves in check. I know agencies like Sandy Springs, they allow their officers to work out an hour on shift. That increases your, your mental health. It increases things like that. So I know that the police field is very short. I know it's short. When I came in, they said it was short. It's always been short. It always will be short. It's not enough officers. That's what they say. So that means that we let officers fall through the cracks. I know officers that are serving prison time, and they need to be checked on before it gets to that point.
Let me ask you this. So anytime somebody joins the police force, they take an initial psych exam. But it's been my experience that they don't take any other mental health screening unless they're involved in an officer involved shooting, or unless there's somebody with the balls at the top and authority to say, hey, I need this person checked or whatever like that. What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I've known officers that were involved in shootings, and you get that, you all right, it's gonna be all right. That that pat on the back, that initial advice, and you always gonna get that the most love and advice in the beginning, and then it just falls by the wayside. So I'm not sure
There's a
exactly what we
video
need
I
to.
want you to see, and I want to get your take on it. As a person who was an officer, a person who had, um, like in your words, you say you just lost it. And I want you to see one particular part of this video, and I want to get your take on it as a person who has had this happen to you, and you're now an advocate for mental health screening and help for officers in a line of duty. Jerome, you play it for us?
In custody, the officers struggle to process the horror they've just witnessed.
No, stay. Hey, no. Calm down. Calm down. Relax. Have her sit down. Sit down. Sit down. I know. Relax.
Excuse me.
You relax.
BB, just relax, BB.
Keep your mouth closed. I didn't give you permission to talk. Sit down and be quiet. You okay?
I'm trying, man.
You okay? No. Listen, I need you to calm down. I need you to calm down. I'm trying. No, I need you to focus. Listen, calm down. I need you to focus. Focus on her. Hey, get over there with her. Put your mask on. Put your mask on.
All right. Put your mask on. Mask up. We're under arrest.
Gloves, everything.
Okay. Everybody should have gloves and a mask on.
Man, yo. What's in there, bro? It's a baby, yo. Come on. Please. Relax, bro. I'm here. I need you to breathe. Good instincts, okay? I need you to breathe, okay?
Okay, Jim, before you talk, let me put that in context. That's a very highly publicized incident. Officers pulled over a woman. She had 2 dead babies in the trunk. You're probably aware with it. So, we already know she has issues, but I want us to look strictly at the officers and how they reacted to this from a mental health perspective. As an ex-law enforcement officer who had a situation where you had a break. Speak from your expertise, and what do you think about this?
I think that you're not sure of what you're getting when you bring somebody onto the police force. It's no different than the military, right? We don't have at that time we didn't have as much training, and everything was like left up to the agency or the county. Now it's like a statewide mandatory type thing now, so everybody's on one accord. But when it comes down to this particular scene right here, I would normally call the chaplain, and the chaplain would always come out no matter what. And he didn't push religion or anything like that. He would come completely in support of that officer. So because I knew that we didn't have the capacity as officers to go and put hands on that young man, and I knew what it felt like, I would be the liaison to go ahead and take the initiative. I would let them know, these are things that you need to look out for. You need to be talking to somebody, some of your family members, if you're not ready to go to therapy. Line you up an appointment. Talk to the chaplain. And that's why you got to utilize your team of people, somebody that you can trust. We don't have anybody on the inside that checks up on the officers. We do have community officers that go out and check on our community and our constituents, but we don't have anybody checking on the inside. So if we
All right.
had something like that, it could be a start.
I agree. Okay, so here's what our friends in the media call the tough questions. I say friends, they're not friends, but I'm being facetious. Okay. So you find an officer
Right.
has a mental breakdown, like this young man here did, or like you did. And I know the situation is different. He's just having a breakdown. Your situation was a use of force situation. What then? Do you retain this officer, or is it time for them to find another line of work?
More than likely, it's going to be time for them to find another line of work. It's only going to get worse.
Okay.
It's only going to get worse. I think there should be like a trial period to let someone figure out if they can recoup from their PTSD. Like that young man that was going through a lot of that was right there on the scene. I can't tell from just looking at that. But if you see a pattern over a 6-month period of time and then an incident occurs, or you see at that point, you need to use your progressive discipline or start pushing that particular officer in another direction, somewhere else within the police field, and just let them know, have that talk with them at some point. You're not going to be cut out for this. And I think because we're short, we retain a lot of the people that we should often, go ahead and let go. And it's a camaraderie thing too. You don't want to get rid of your people, and you know that that's how they eat. You know,
You're right. Absolutely.
it's hard.
But
It's
you
hard to
so
let your people
so
go.
no, I think that was a very straightforward answer. So you do agree, even though you're in a situation where you admitted losing it, you do agree that if officers can't take that type of pressure, they shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
Right. But like you said, and I thought,
I've
and
seen
I
it multiple
right.
times,
Yes.
including
Yes.
in myself. I've
Right.
seen it multiple times. Even if you're not losing it, you could be so complacent to where you can cause somebody, serious injury, like not being there. You've completely checked out. You're damaging the community and the law enforcement. You're damaging that relationship because you've checked out. You've
Right.
checked out.
Because our job is to bring order to chaos.
Mhm.
And if we're out of control, then how can we bring a situation under control? You agree?
Totally agree.
Okay, so now let's play devil's advocate and reverse that. And and I guess this is where my brother and I come in.
Mhm.
So some people question us because I've spent a decade in homicide, he spent a long time in narcotics, and sometimes people question the fact that we don't snap under pressure. Like, okay, maybe you're there's words for it. I'm not talking about that word they always use in relationships, narcissists, but there's another word for it where you're around violence
Like
and
a
stuff all the
sociopath.
time. That's the word.
Could be.
That's the
You're
word. That's the word.
sociopaths.
Right, right, right,
Okay.
Mhm.
right. We're talking about my brother, not me. But
Right.
anyway,
Okay. Of course. Of course.
exactly. But anyway,
Got-
do you
we
think
got
that?
news articles on your ass.
Yeah, but do you think that the officers that don't snap under pressure or whatever, is there something there too? Because if we're looking for that type of person, if the best type of cops are the ones that they can see this type of stuff and still function on the scene and still function at home and still go on the next day, is there something wrong with that? Your honest
No,
opinion. I'm just being throwing devil's advocate.
I am very afraid of that type of officer. I am very afraid of that type of officer. I've seen it, and it's like they're on autopilot, like they're robots. And I joke, and I'm like, man, it got to be something really dark at home in them closets, because they they just, they just straightforward. They are who they are. They can handle anything. They don't look. everything is so nonchalant. I've seen those officers.
So my brother's a sociopath. That's what you're saying.
Is that how you are, Jerome?
No, I'm a psychopath.
You're a psychopath. At least
All
you
right, let's
know.
get serious. Let's get serious. Okay, so I bring that up because um, I met a doctor, and he's very interesting. He used to do all of the screenings for the sheriff's office. I don't know if he still does. I think he still does, but uh, he's a doctor that he is an expert on biofeedback, and he's someone I've said that we need to come on the show. When he does come on the show, I'd like to have you back. We got to find him and get him on the show. But biofeedback is something that's used to treat PSTD. And one time he approached me and said, "Hey, listen, if we could get the money, I think that if we did biofeedback with the criminals in your jail, it could actually stop them from committing crime because something to do with the frontal lobe." But he said, but even more interesting, he said that the Israeli military has experimented with this with military people to strengthen their mind in order to deal with trauma and war and carnage and stuff like that. And it was very, very, very interesting. I know biofeedback is used for athletes and they train their high beta so that they can perform. And I got very interested in that. And at that point, I was doing a lot of training, and I wanted to increase my speed with my pistol. So I actually tried the high beta, and it was very good. I ended up shooting quarter seconds as a result of it. But what intrigued me about the whole thing was that he said that this could be something that could help officers also with the trauma that they see and strengthen their mind. I gotta find a way. I'm gonna get in touch with him.
I
And
would like to know some more information about
yeah,
that, if you don't
absolutely.
mind. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll message you on that. That'll be some good stuff to research.
Jerome, I've been asking all the questions. You've been mighty silent. I'm
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you are the sociopath we've been talking about here, but you got some questions for our guests?
Ms. Jones, I assume that you did not wear um, a body camera, right?
That is correct. The
And
mount for my body camera was in my boot bag.
okay, what about the your subordinate?
He had his body camera on.
Okay, was that turned in?
He didn't record. He just had it on his person.
Is he still employed?
Yes.
Okay, and because obviously his conduct was substandard, for sure. And of course I'm sure they're going to blame that on you because of the fact that you were his superior on that end of it. Um, do you think your behavior would have changed had you had your body cam on?
No.
Okay, so this was not only an emotional break, but this was a mental break
You
also.
know, I believe I kept it cool all the way until, I mean, I never once thought in my head like, yeah, when I see him, I'm telling you. I never in my head, I'm like, we're gonna take him back to the precinct. We, Mirandize him. Da, da, da. I'm thinking about going through all the proper steps to do this the right way,
Mhm.
even though it's just me. I mean, even though I'm the victim. My
Sure.
subordinate, I know he didn't have the capacity. So I didn't lose it until it was literally lost, just like that, and there was nothing stopping it.
Right. So two things could be the same at one time. You could have had
Yeah,
the break still, but
yeah.
then been on autopilot and just kept on doing the minutia of the job. Certainly,
Mhm,
and it
mhm.
sounds like that was pretty much what was going on, as opposed to obviously losing heat or developing, as you called it, having heat. When you really, and really what it was a sense of enragement that just came out when you took the situation from being, what it was to full blown victimhood and trying to protect yourself and really your life. Because at that point in time, your life was, if I'm hearing this correctly, was all, pretty much underwater. We're talking about, with the
Yeah.
finances, we're talking about the first car being stolen and then the rental car. So that's really, not giving the justification for the the actions thereafter, but at that point in time, the slippage began well before this particular incident. And we always have that trigger moment where somebody just decides at that point in time, and really it's subconscious in nature. This is it. You know what I mean? I'm going to go ahead and handle this on my own because I don't see any other recourse that there is out there. And thus, a lot of it is we don't have the space to talk to other people. And you guys were trying to allude to it as, hey, guess what? You know, um, I pretty much is on my own, you know, and you're on your own as an officer on the island. You can't talk to others, you know. And part of what we get into is certainly as police officers is that we're grieved at the fact that, here we are helping out the whole entire world. And thus, who helps us when the world comes down on us? And it is, that phenomenon can go ahead and be exasperating on that end of it. Since then, though, you know, what message do you have for the next officer that's silently struggling and thus may not look like what you've been through, but these are things that we can't see readily.
Right,
We probably couldn't see that in you.
right, right.
So, what is something that you would like to say about that?
Um, I think the biggest thing is having someone within the agency that you can confide in. Now, you need external resources and you need internal resources. And every agency can't provide those resources. They just don't have the capacity. And but there's someone within the agency that does, and you'll know that person because they'll normally check on you, or someone that you're close to. Ask them, who can I talk to about some stuff? I want to ask some questions about some personal stuff, you know and it's normally like already a close-knit group within an agency that will bring you into the fold and help you out. But then the external resources is, you got to get the therapy, you have to get help, you
Right.
have to try to fix yourself. You
Mm.
can't fall into the sunken place.
Right.
You can't think that you're the only one. See, the problem is with policing, you think everybody else have their stuff together.
That's true. A lot
You
of people
think
feel that way.
everybody can see that you're drowning
Hmm.
and that you're barely making it.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
And
And so,
yeah, no, you're right.
You're
I think a
absolutely
lot
right
of people
about that.
believe that police officers have it together, that they don't have quite the other they really do put us on a pedestal in terms of having our affairs together, our credit together. We're above reproach because we can't make any type of mistakes. We can't say certain things and so on and so forth. Um, that's a high bar to stay up on all the
man,
time.
what you say?
And so when you're constantly in a fishbowl where everybody's looking at you, every move that you make, um, it is being scrutinized. I think a lot of people just do not understand that. I think celebrities understand that. I think the certain other professions understand that. But, you know, people watch every move, particularly if you're in uniform. Everybody watch every step. They watch everything you do. You can't do nothing out here that can't be scrutinized. Um, and that's tough for a young officer to go ahead and deal
Very,
with. And
very much
we,
so.
of course, as we go through our career, um, we become numb to that. But
Oh,
sometimes when we
absolutely.
become numb to that, there are moments where, if for lack of a better word, we let our hair down, and that is when all the scrutiny, all the unsavory things come to pass. I
Hmm.
can see a moment like this happening, and my heart goes out to the young man that was assaulted. My heart definitely goes out to you and what happened to you, and certainly to the officer um, that witnessed that.
Yeah.
Um, but these were also survivable moments. And I think that, quite truthfully, um, once you knew that this was not the place to be at, you acquitted yourself well. I do want to say that there's something to be said about being a stand-up person, and coming on the show today to say your truth about that too. It takes a lot of guts. I know a lot of men that don't even have half the guts that you have.
That's
So
true.
I just want to go ahead and say
That's
that right off
true.
the bat.
Yeah. Anyone who knows me, they know, like, I don't hold back. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm completely open, and because I want people, like, I didn't have an advocate. You know, my
Mm,
mother, she only had two other siblings, and I didn't have any aunts. I had nobody. It was just us, and I had to navigate through a lot on my own. And
sure,
when I got to the police department, it was like a subculture inside of a culture,
sure,
and
Yeah.
that can be traumatizing in itself, because policing is politics now. It's all political.
sure.
It used to be the OGs in the game. They're gonna get you that training, and the, the newcomers were too soft. We were too soft coming in, you know. And we're running the OGs away, the ones that care, the ones that'll pull you to the side, the ones that can see through those things,
Hmm.
I
the
agree.
ones that's willing to put in the extra time to teach you. They've retired out.
Right,
They've
right.
retired out. They're not appreciated as much as they should be. So um it is unfortunate, but I wish I could go to the academy and teach this in a course. This should
There's
be
some academies that would love to have you.
I
That
would
Absolutely.
I
story
would
is,
love to go and
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about, how mental health can affect the workplace in policing.
right.
From anger to complacency, not wanting to do your job, to showing up late. There's things that, there's tiers and there's levels to mental health that we don't just need to train about, the CIT in the street. We need to do it with our officers too. We need to know what to look for.
Right,
We do.
right.
You you know, I'm sorry, Jerome. You got something? Go ahead.
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I hope we take away from the show. I've always said and will always be an advocate that everything rises and falls on leadership. And the leadership has
Hmm.
to be strong enough to take a stand. You're right when you say that there's not a lot of funding. Every agency should probably have a mental health counselor, but not just someone sitting there saying, "Hey, if you want to talk, come see me." So nobody's going to see him.
Right.
But somebody that's there monitoring, and they can see the signs, the pre-attack indicators, the everything, and say, "Hey, listen, this person is fitting the word that we hate to use, profile, or characteristics or symptoms of someone that probably we need to evaluate or whatever." I know as a sheriff, it angered a lot of people, but there are people I just ordered to get mental health treatment or go see our psychiatrist because there were things they were doing that didn't make sense. Some going out of the way to bother other employees to the point of harassing them, leaving notes on their desks and stuff like that. And they just wouldn't let it go. It was like this type of obsessive behavior with a particular person. And I thought nothing of fit for duty and, hey, go get some help, because these people are carrying guns. And what's impressive about you is the fact that you didn't say, well, hey, you know what? There should have been something so I could have went back, or something that they could say. You're bold enough to say, hey, if that type of pressure you don't operate well under, you shouldn't be there. And the leaders are going to have to do that. Of course, they're very, very afraid because it's a litigious world. So many people where you're discriminating me because of this and that. But we're dealing with life and death. We're dealing with people carrying guns. We're dealing with people that have the ability to take somebody's life, or not just the fact that they could use excessive force, but they could freeze in a situation where we don't need them to freeze. I mean, it's nothing worse than being in a gunfight and the person backing you up freezes and can't do nothing, or you're in an actual fight and the person next to you freezes because the pressure is so much they don't know what to do, so they just freeze up.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the type of stuff that those type of people should not be soldiers on the front line. They should not be cops. That's not an indictment on them. It doesn't mean they're
Right.
bad people.
Right.
It just means that they shouldn't, kind of like the last time I played basketball with Jerome. He was honest with me. He said, this is probably something you don't need to do anymore. Right. Right. It didn't look like the NBA was in my future. And I took his advice and I went and did something that I thought I could be great at. So one last question before we go. Uh so let's talk about leadership. So let's say I'm the sheriff and I'm on TV, and there's a massive incident going on in the city or something like that, and all of a sudden I break down, I start crying at the press conference. I think the first time we saw that, and no indictment on him, fine man, I think he passed away, but during the DC sniper,
Mhm.
the police chief started crying uh at that particular press conference, and actually it kind of became fashionable. Some people started crying, and I don't know if they were really
Yeah.
crying or not. And then there are others that really are crying.
It was
What's
Chief Moose Montgomery, I believe,
exactly,
from
exactly,
Prince
exactly.
George's County.
Prince George County, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I saw that.
Mhm.
Mm.
And so, what's your thoughts if the leader is emotional or has an emotional breakdown, like the officers we just saw?
That's something that's difficult right there because a lot of our leaders, believe it or not, um, they're ruling emotionally, and you can see it in a lot of these agencies that are deteriorating from the inside. They lack discipline. They lack self control. It's you know, things are going rampant. You've spoken about you know, Clayton County and its position, and so what do we do with our leaders? That is a good question because who's their boss? You know, they're playing up to politics, but they have their own, and it takes a long time for a chief for you to recognize you know, a damaged chief, so to,
Yeah.
you know, so to speak. And it's damaging to the department because it trickles down. But that could be something that needs to be researched as well. Like, how can we bring more attention to that? What can we do? What are the options?
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think your answer is the same. Just like you say that there are officers that probably shouldn't be there if they can't take pressure. Again, whatever the leader
But
is, the
it's hard to
organization.
get rid of a chief.
Oh,
You
I
know,
know, I
normally
know,
they're there
and
for a reason. You know, they're put into place
oh,
for a reason.
absolutely, and even harder to get rid of an elected official.
Hmm.
But I think it's something we need to look at. If an elected official has an emotional breakdown publicly, first of all, in a situation where you're looking for killers and those killers are still out there, uh, I'm not sure if that's a good thing for killers to see the head guy breaking down because they're
Right.
having the effect they want to have. So I don't think that makes them say, you know what? Oh my God, the sheriff or the chief is on TV crying. I feel bad. Let me turn myself in or let me stop killing people. We certainly know that's not going to happen. Furthermore, whatever the leader is, the organization is. So if the leader is strong, the organization is strong. If the leader is paranoid, the organization is paranoid. So, like you said, and you just said it, it trickles down. So that's probably as we look at more monitoring mental health among officers, as we look more at making sure that there are people in place that are mentally strong enough to handle it. We got to look at the leaders too, because if we see an emotional breakdown of them on TV, then that could be a sign that they're not fit to lead, just like those officers aren't fit to police if they're having mental breakdown. One thing I always quote my brother on, he always tells my nephew, his son, which he's extremely physically strong and physically talented in martial art. But he always tells him, he said, I don't care if you can bench press 500 pounds, if you're mentally weak, you're weak.
Mm.
And it's profound. He was right when he told him that. It was a profound moment. I think it caused my nephew to take a pause and think for a second. And we know in policing you have to be mentally strong, and that's not an indictment on people who aren't mentally strong, because we're here to protect those people. That's what we're here for. The strong should protect the weak, but then at the same time, the weak shouldn't be put in position to protect if they're not able to protect themselves.
But I don't want us to get, you know, take compassion as a weakness because,
Right.
you know, I'm not at all weak. I was a very good, you know, trainer. a very good instructor, because I have a way of explaining things that anyone can get it. Anyone can see themselves in that situation. So I was mentally strong in a lot of different
let,
areas.
let me correct that. Let me correct that. No, no, no. You're extremely strong. Any man that can take on, any woman that can take on a car thief and make him go to the ground and say, no, we ain't questioning your strength. I think we're doing, wait, let
You
me make
being
sure I
petty.
clarify. No, 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 no. Let me clarify. We in no way think that you're weak. You actually, you're one of the strongest women I know. Let me correct that so so I'm not misunderstood. Okay, what I'm talking about is that, there's different types of mental health issues. Everyone who has mental health issues is not a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And you're right. You're not a danger to society. You're not out there,
Right.
whatever. There are some people, or there are some people who are like the man that just stabbed the young woman on the train that
Yeah.
had mental health
Yeah.
issues. Okay, but then there are also other mental health issues where people break, like the young man at the scene, at the murder scene. And when I say, I'm not trying to say, hey, you're weak, like on the street terms, he's a punk. But what we're saying is, mentally, he can't handle being around death or the death of kids. That type of stuff causes him to have to stop and take a pause. And in our line of work, we can't stop and take a pause. We've got to take
Right.
command and control. I need the
Absolutely.
crime scene tape. I need this. I need you to do this and that. If we have to stop and get ourselves together,
Together.
then who's in control of the scene? So please don't mistake that as I'm calling these folks weak in a bad way or
Right.
whatever like that. What I'm saying is they're not they're not mentally strong enough to take that particular type of pressure. And then there's the other type where, no, you are strong. It's just that you might get strong enough to whip somebody's ass like what you did. So there's a balance and a yin yang there, or whatever, that I'm talking about. But in no means do we think you're weak. Actually, you would probably been a better backup in some situations I was in than a lot of men that backed me up that did absolutely nothing. So,
So I've been
so
told.
exactly right.
Very
So,
true.
but I'm glad you said that, because I want that clarified, because if they came up across to you that way, then our audience might have got it wrong. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
No problem. But I look forward to doing more grassroots stuff with law enforcement, working on a course that I can pitch to some agencies as far as like a mental health course, things to look for within law enforcement. I'm working with a nurse to just look at some of the steps. She's a psychiatric nurse, and so just looking at some things that we can put together. I'm an instructor. I'm well certified through Post, not any longer, but I can put together a lesson plan so we can pitch that possibly to Post and just get some momentum. So I'm gonna keep working on this. We'll find it. We'll find the funding, or we can just build it within. It can be completely voluntary at first, just to try it
I
out.
I see a bright future for you in this, and who knows? Maybe it's better you're not in law enforcement, because in law enforcement, if you're still opposed, there's a stigma. There's folks afraid to say, "Hey, I think something's wrong" or whatever. I think you have put yourself in a predicament where officers, when they find out about you, here's someone I can talk to, and
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying, because they may not feel comfortable at their department, because, like you said, there's a lot of politics there. They're afraid, well, I just won't get me promoted. It won't. And it's very political. I mean, and it depends on who you are. I mean, we had a man at Clayton County that had a breakdown, had a shotgun, was running around. They had to talk him out of it. And he eventually became the chief of police. So it all depends on what the politics are. You know what I'm saying? It really all depends on what the politics are. And so you're right. But if they have someone they can go to that has walked that path before, like you,
Absolutely.
and someone they could feel comfortable with, because they know you're not being judgmental, because, hey, listen, I'm saying it, I had financial problems, I had this, that, and it caused me to snap. I think that's powerful, and I got to join my brother. First of all, it takes courage to come on the show.
It does, yes.
It takes
I
courage to
appreciate
be a
that.
cop and be a woman, first of all. And then it takes courage to be able to admit to something most people can't or won't, or feel uncomfortable. Just you being on the show, uh, you're a very strong woman, and I want to compliment you on it. And I think that I just feel that you're going to be a big help to a lot of people in law enforcement and out of law enforcement. And I hope that this is the beginning of your path. I don't know if it's going to
Thank
be a
you.
nonprofit. I don't know
Thank
if
you.
someone's going to bring you on their organization, but I think that you could be a huge advocate for this because it's something that's very, very, very much needed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, you, Jerome, you, Mr. Hill, and good luck on your congressional run for the fifth district here in Georgia.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you out there doing your thing. You got my support,
Thank
100.
you. Thank you.
But yes, that's I want people to look at my story. I'm putting myself out there, so people can look at my story and stop yourself. Stop yourself before you get there.
Yeah.
You know when you're spiraling, even if you don't say anything to anyone. You know when you're spiraling, and we have to check ourselves. We owe it to our oath to check ourselves, and sometimes we got to get out of there before it's too
Yeah.
late, before we do a disservice.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and land the plane right now. Um, and just wanted to tell the audience thank you for watching us, subscribing. We want to give us very special thanks to Jen Jones for joining us, and certainly the platform is here for others to come and share their stories. This is one, obviously a profound story, but I wanted to go ahead and thank you once again, Jen, for joining us, and certainly my brother Victor, as
Thank
we
you so
went
much
a
for
little
having
bit
me.
long on this, but I, we thought that
We
this would
needed it.
be,
We needed
yeah,
it.
we needed to go ahead and talk about these matters, and certainly we want to just tell people to subscribe, like, comment, particularly on this very important subject. Next week's show is going to be bananas. Just I we'll talk about it later, but it's going to be bananas. So please stay tuned to next week's show, as we have a bunch of people coming on and talking about all types of things. So we're going to get into that.
Mm,
So
okay.
without further ado, I just want to say good night, and we'll see everyone later. Take
Good
care.
night. Thanks for having me. Take
Good
care.
night. Look, the pleasure is ours.